Welcome to this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast, where we look forward to shaving every day. Welcome to episode 113 of the podcast. My name is Rick DeWeese. I'll be your host this week. This week we've got emails and notes and links and all kinds of good stuff. So we'll start off with some emails, something that I didn't know about that, well, every now and then it catches me off guard. Somebody sent me some links to some videos, and I'm going to go ahead and link them up on the podcast blog page there because, well, I think they're rather interesting, and I think you'll enjoy them. So I'll put a link to the first one here, and you can watch them, and I encourage you to do so because, well, I learned a few things, so that was good stuff. Thursday's shave of the day, Sharpologist has done it again, and so they did a review. It's a darn good review, too. Throwing a Friday shave of the day and a Monday shave of the day, now with Extra Rant. Signs. What's that one about? Well, you have to listen to find out. Tuesday shave of the day. If you want to learn about the Valet Autostrops, and I'm using an Autostrop this week as the razor of the week in the old parlance of the podcast. There's a blog post that's up on ShaveNook.com that is an excellent resource to learn about Autostrops. I'll link to that. Finally, the Wednesday shave of the day, and it's got some extra reflections in it, well, because it's Veterans Day. So that's the show this week. Hopefully you enjoy it. Let's get on with this thing. So I got an email from a listener named Greg. It says, "Hello, Rick. My name is Greg. Been a podcast listener pretty much since you began. I wanted to ask you to see if you'd be interested in something. If not, no problem at all. Attached, I have a couple of photos of some vintage Yardley shaving soap. I received this from my grandfather along with some other wet shaving items. It looks like this soap goes for anywhere around $90 on eBay, and I found a sample just recently. The opening bid was like $50. He said, I received this as well as some vintage Old Spice soap. I think this Yardley soap gets some outstanding reviews online, but to me, I think I'm getting better performance from the Old Spice. My plan was to piff on a forum to some people who would be interested, then maybe have that person piff to another, and so forth. I thought that would be a good idea since this soap is fairly uncommon and others in the community might not have had a chance to try any up to this point. But I thought I'd reach out to you first to see if you want to give it a review. See what you think. If you like it, you could hang on to it or piff it whenever you feel like it. I like listening to your reviews, so I thought I'd try you first. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks. And so I sent him a thing back and said, yeah, I'd love to try some. I mean, that's, a vintage soap. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? So, sent him the information, and he sent me the soap. And that's what I've been using this week. And so over the course of the shaves of the day, you will hear what my opinion and experience has been with the Yardley vintage soap. But quite honestly, Greg, thank you very much. Can't tell you how much that means to me that you that you thought of me to give it a shot and try it out. So it'll be interesting. I have a few people in mind that I may loan it to and gauge their experience as well. So thank you very much, and hope you enjoy listening to this week's episode to know what I thought, well, of your Yardley soap. Got an email from Bill. Greetings, Rick. Listening to Cast 111 here at the Donut Factory and have been meaning to drop you a line for a while. Sounds like you have a serious problem with soaps that are too full. If you need assistance with this, let me know. I have a patented process of utilizing only the top half of the soaps over months and would be happy to utilize this top secret process to aid in your lather issue. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate the offer. I may have to think about that. Anyhow, it goes on. I've tried the same caffeinated shave cream you've been calling toothpaste. I have to disagree with the scent description, but the performance is less than wonderful. All right, the scent of that stuff to me is very minty, and for me anyhow, it seemed like the smell of toothpaste. So it may not be to anybody else. It's one of those things where people's sense of smell is different. And so if somebody tells me I'm wrong, I'm cool with that. But for me, I got to call it toothpaste. Anyhow, it goes on. I did note on a trip to your neck of the country that it worked well as a brushless with soft water. As good as or better than Cremo, but in the end, Proraso does better than either of them and easily 100 times better with a brush, so pass on the gimmicks as usual. Finally, I wanted to mention an interesting problem I have run into to see if you have experienced it. I recently procured a Fallen Angel hair brush from Fine. I like the black and clear handle, but it needs a darker name to go with it. I like that, Fallen Angel, yeah. Anyhow, I am unable to lather in my salsa bowl using Proraso cream. It foams up a little, but that's it. But the same brush on my face, and 3 or 4 strokes later, I'm drowning in lather. I would never have believed it had I not done it more than once in my own bathroom. So now I find myself a face latherer. The horrors. Perhaps a little sandpaper in the bowl is all that it will take, but for now, I do not care to change what is working so well. Insert clever regards here, Bill. Okay, so on the salsa bowl, if you take a salsa bowl that is brand new or never been touched on the inside is smooth and exceedingly smooth, actually. There may be a few lines in it or something, but for the most part, it's smooth. What I found is that for all of my soaps and all of my brushes, I have always had a difficult time getting a decent lather in a smooth salsa bowl. Let's just put it, difficult to get a really nice lather, and the lathers always seemed, strained is the best word to say it. But so what I did is I'll take 60 grit or 80 grit sandpaper and just rough up the inside of the salsa bowl. And quite honestly, the easiest way to do that is to wrap a piece of sandpaper around a tennis ball and just abrade the inside surface. It doesn't matter what patterns you use, it's just abrade the inside surface. Now, once you do that, the lather will just, at least for me, in my experience, it will explode out of the salsa bowl. However, the first couple times you do this until you knock all the edges down just a little bit, the lather will be exceedingly foamy. It takes for me, it usually takes about 3 or 4 lathers for that to settle down and for you to get just a good, nice, creamy lather instead of the foam. So that's what I would try. But yeah, your experience mirrors mine. The other issue that you have, at least again from what I've seen, using the fine brush, is that it is an exceedingly small knot, and it just doesn't hold a lot. It just doesn't hold a lot of soap, and so I found some difficulties with that too. I even with the roughed up salsa bowl, what I've seen is that the fine brush will have less lather generated than the same loading on my Plisson brush. My Plisson brush is a bigger knot. It's essentially the same fiber, but it's a bigger knot, and so when you load it, it actually has more soap available to create the lather with. So there's that you're dealing with too. So there's a lot of stuff there, but very good comments, and what you're seeing is not different than what I have seen. Anyhow, Bill, I'll have to think about your offer. Thanks a lot for the email. So I also got another email. It says, Dear Rick, my name is Soshi. I'm a subscriber of your podcast. I really look forward to listening to your podcast every Thursday. Great job. I'm a Japanese wet shaver. Unfortunately, I'm not good at English. I can barely understand 50 to 60% of what you are saying, but I really enjoy it. Sorry for my broken English. Okay, first off, your English in this email is fine. Having lived in a foreign country and written in a foreign language for many years, don't apologize. You're doing great. Anyhow, it goes on to say, the traditional wet shaving isn't so popular in Japan. Of course, here, there are many wet shavers, but almost all of them use Schick's or Gillette cartridge razors. For traditional wet shaving, we don't have a lot of vendors, artisans, or big forums. International shipping costs is a burden, but I can't help buying razors, soaps, and brushes. I'm addicted. I'm happy that I found this podcast. Keep it up. All the best, Soshi. Also, he says, P.S. I saw your pictures of your beautiful shovel head. It can hold a Feather SE high stainless blade without the spine. A shovel head and high stainless is my favorite combo. Try it. Well, thank you. That is a great tip. And the other interesting thing is that in looking at the Feather spineless, I was using some gem blades with my shovel head, and it's got two, fairly large hooks that hold the blade side to side. And on the gem razor blades that I'm using, there are actually two notches that happen to correspond to these hooks that hold the blade in place. Now, the problem with that is that without tension on the blade can move sideways because those notches are there. Now, on the Feather spineless single-edge blade, there's no notch. There's no way for the blade to move side to side. So, and in fact, on the original Valet Autostrop blades, there's nothing to go side to side. Now, it's going to be interesting. I need to get another set of PAL carbon blades to see if they have notches. I don't remember that they do. So that'll be interesting. Anyhow, Soshi, thank you very much for the letter. Great to hear from you. I also got a message from Niles over on Twitter. And he asked me a question, and, usually when people ask me questions concerning razors, I like to think I sort of kind of at least have a clue. So he asked me this question: have you ever heard of a Zigler razor? No. Dang it. So I looked up the Zigler razors, and apparently there was a Zigler razor company that was, down in Charleston, South Carolina. So of course now I want one. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't want a razor that's made back in the day in your own state? I mean, that's just cool. So, he said he came across a Zigler slant, and so he picked it up. And I was like, man, good grab, because from what I have seen, they appear to be fairly rare. So I asked him to let me know how it shaves, but a Zigler razor, a Zigler slant. I'd never heard of one. Made right here in South Carolina back in the day. Who'd have thought? I also got a message from Mark over on Facebook, and he has put together a video series, and the video series is the history of shaving. And right now there's two parts, or at least when I'm reading this, there are two parts. And it's really a good, quick look at the history of shaving that brings some points that, even I wasn't aware of. And he's asked me if I would put a link to it up on the podcast webpage, and I'm going to do that because I think it's something that, it's very entertaining, and I think people would appreciate it being there. And so give it a shot. Take a look at it. I'll put a link to the part one. That is, I'll put that in the show notes, and that way you can just go directly on YouTube, and it'll pop up part two right there for you as well. And like I said, I'll put a link to it on the webpage there, on the blog post. And take a look at it, because it really is rather interesting. I didn't understand previously the relationships between the people that were in the razor business. And so, Mark, thank you very much for making them, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to post them on the blog post. All right, well, today is an interesting day. First off, it rained a bit last night, but it is warm out here, or at least compared to what it's been. It's 62 degrees out here. It's spring-like. Really, really nice. The shave of the day today, I have been experimenting with a new version of my scuttle, if you will. And in fact, what I've been doing is I have been using a coffee warmer. Now, this was something that, an idea that had been sent to me. I can't remember if it was in a comment or an email a long time ago. However, when it was sent to me, it was like right in the middle of, the hot season, and it wasn't something that I was wanting to do just because the season didn't, ask for it. But now, as things are cooling down, except today, now things are, starting to get a little bit cooler, and it's just a little bit nicer, and things are good, and so I have been using a little coffee warmer. It is a Mr. Coffee warmer. And basically what it is, it's a small thermostatically controlled hot plate, for all intensive purposes. And so what I will do is I will fill a mug, in this case a small, soup mug or a big coffee mug, that has a flat bottom. I find certain bottoms work better than others, but be that as it may, fill it up with hot water and turn this little coffee warmer on and set it on there and soak my brush while I'm taking a shower. Now, what ends up happening is between the hot water that's in it and the warmth that's coming from the bottom, it never loses any heat. And so I step out of the shower and I have an exceedingly nicely warmed mug to begin with. My brush is warm and all is good. Well, today again was something special. A reader had sent me some soap to try, and he's got a couple of them, and it's a fairly rare soap. And that soap is Yardley's of London. And he said, I have this, it lathers great, but it's not real slick. Okay. So I went ahead and lathered it up. I soaked the Nathan Clark Badger brush and, used it to lather up the Yardley soap. And yes, the Yardley soap, even though it is, old, lathered exceedingly well. It really did. It was a nice lathering soap. Now, one issue is that, of course, I have been predominantly using my bore brushes, and bore brushes do not absorb the same amount of water as a badger brush does. And so for me, just a quick shake of the bore brush and I have about the right water consistency. Well, I had a little bit too much water today. So the lather was a bit, thin, but at the same time, it was, very rich. It really was, and it lathered very, very nicely. So, we'll keep playing around with that, or maybe we'll switch to a bore brush and fix that. But for today, a hot Yardley soap lather with the Nathan Clark bore brush was in order. Now, in order to do this soap that is relatively rare and rather expensive when you can find it, in order to do it justice, I whipped out my Valet Autostrop. Now, I haven't used my Valet Autostrop in a while, and quite honestly, it's a wonderful, wonderful shaving instrument. And when you think of the age of the thing, it really is both ingenious and rather a shaving miracle, in my opinion. It's a stupendous idea, and the fact that they actually use the blade as essentially the top cap for the razor is that's cool. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. That's just cool. Now, in looking at it, it's scary as anything, because you think, oh my God, there's nothing to protect me. But in fact, the top cap of the razor does not protect you from anything to begin with, really. So it's just kind of a unique thing. And I really like the concept. It's a nice concept. Anyhow, the Valet Autostrop is then married up to a feather spineless single-edged blade, and shaving is presumed. And it did an absolutely wonderful job. I mean, I've always been amazed by that setup. Between the feather blade and the Valet Autostrop, the angles on the thing are just perfect, at least in my opinion. And I've always called it a lightsaber for stubble. And it did not disappoint this morning. It did a fabulous job. Now, the Yardley. Okay, so the Yardley soap, it had really good cushion, even though it was thin. But it didn't have a whole lot of residual slickness. Now, it had slickness when you were going over an area that had been lathered, but it didn't have residual slickness. There was, once you did a pass, there was a very nice, just clean feel. It's a very clean soap. It's, there's nothing that sticks around, if you will. Now, the thing that's interesting is I'm comparing that in my head to the soap one of the soaps that I used last week, which was in fact the Mitchell's Wool Soap. And the Mitchell's Wool Soap wool fat has a distinct and decided residual slickness. When you get this stuff on your hands, even if you just rinse off the foam, your hands are still slick, and that stays around, and it's, I'm not going to say difficult to wash off, but it does take a little bit of effort to get that residual slickness out of there. And the Yardley, on the other hand, does not have that. However, when you are shaving through lather with the Yardley, it is really, really a nice soap. I was very, very impressed with it. So that's kind of my first impressions, out of the box. And I mean, I really, really enjoyed this morning. It was just, had a little extra time and took a little extra time and just, kind of luxuriated in a new soap and one of my favorite razor setups. And of course, the Nathan Clark brush is always just spectacular. I do enjoy that Badger knot. So, all in all, good stuff. Now, to finish it off, the other day I looked at an article, and it was an article on how to eliminate or reduce, razor irritation and all this. And one of the ones that they talked about was the Cat A balms, or the L'Occitane balms, rather. Cat A being one of them. Now, I have an assortment of sample balms. There's L'Orange and Cat A, and there's another one which is, and I believe it's a lavender. But they're small tubes, and I don't use them very often, but they are rich and luxurious balms. And so I decided, what goes with what I've done today? And I decided on the L'Orange, and just a nice orange-smelling balm that's just kind of tops off a great shave. And so we're going into a beautiful day. It's overcast, but that's okay. It's a beautiful day. It's warm. In fact, now it's 63 degrees, so it should be a warm day. It's a fall day. The leaves changing colors and dropping out of the trees, and I have a slight rich smell of fall orange that is coming to me every now and then from the balm, and wow, just good stuff. It's days like this that you really just need to revel. I just absolutely revel in the fact that, you're alive, and that you get to experience the just absolute wonderful glory that is, this existence. It really is. And sometimes, we lose sight of that from time to time, especially when we get rushed and busy and everything else. And one of the nice things, at least for me, about shaving, about wet shaving, is, again, it gives you an opportunity to kind of sit back and center. And if you can pull that out of the shave den and pull that a little bit into your life and realize that, things are not stressful. Things are just beautiful and glorious, and, just the passing of seasons and the passing of time and water running down a hill and, river and fish and I don't know. It's just, life in general is just an absolutely wonderful thing. It's one of those things where in my head, there's a video reel of the time-lapse footage of plants growing and things like that, like you used to see, at least what I did when I was a kid in school and things, when they used to talk about that stuff. Just absolutely wondrous how life, just exists and it's there, and there's not really a whole lot we can do to stop it. It's funny when you get into an area, and you cut back all the weeds, and, as long as you maintain it, great. Stop maintaining it. Life will be there. It will show up, and it will take over. It will expand into it, and, it's a wonderful thing. And the variety is just spectacular. The different kind of trees and plants and things that we have, it really is amazing. Even down to, you sit there and you look at a big oak tree, which is a certain type, and it's covered in moss, which is a completely different type, and it is absolutely amazing. Anyhow, it's one of those things where when I take a little bit of time and just, I don't know, reflect, if you will, it is an absolutely amazing thing that we enjoy. And from time to time, when we enjoy it, just makes it all that more special. So, Sharpologist has done it again. They have done a review on Oneblade. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with this, Oneblade is a new razor that is being offered, and it's a little unique. First off, it uses a spineless feather single-edge blade. Now, just so you know, these are exactly the same blades as I'm using in my Valet Autostrop this week. That is my razor of choice this week. Well, the Oneblade uses the same blade. Now, the other thing that's interesting about the Oneblade razor is that the head pivots. And in addition to that, it is made out of stainless steel. And in addition to that, it's guaranteed for forever. In the one razor box that it comes with, which happens to be made out of leather, the presentation box, there is a lifetime guarantee. Good not only for the shaver's life, but his son's, and his grandson's too. Yeah. Now, the downside of this animal is that it's like $300. Yeah, I said that right. $300 for a razor that will last, forever, and is made out of stainless steel and has a pivot. Now, Sharpologist, Mark over there, Mantic59, has done a very nice job of giving a review of this thing. Some of the things that he noted, now I'll link to this review so you can see all the pictures and all the different parts of the review. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but some of his experiences have been, rather interesting. The angle, he reports, that you hold the razor is a little bit different than either a cartridge razor or a double-edged razor. It may take a shave or two to get the grip right, but he finds that the weight and the balance of the razor is good. There's also a tendency to want to feel the pivot by pressing down on the razor. In other words, putting pressure on it. Don't do that. Just very light pressure on the razor, kind of like a DE, and ignore the pivot. It works, but in the background so that you don't really notice it. Short shaving strokes work better for him than long strokes. Okay. And a fresh blade for every shave is recommended. And he says, that did work best for me, but he found that he could get 3 to 4 shaves per blade if necessary. Now, if I look back on my experience with my Valet Autostrop, yeah, I'm getting about four shaves, and then, it's probably time to change it out. So I don't know that that's so much a function of the razor as it is a function of the feather blade. Now, the other thing is that he also states a multi-pass shave is still necessary for optimum results. Okay, so it's interesting because one of the things that they do is they do kind of a price breakdown and say, well, if you are a cartridge razor buyer and, you go through one a week and, it costs $25 for 4 of them or so, you're going to spend about $312, I think is what it says. And that's really close to the price point of this razor minus the blades. Now, they do have blades that they offer, and they're the feather blades, which is an excellent blade, but it's also proprietary to the Oneblade. Anyhow, it is unique, and it is a unique blog post because it is not just Mantic's experience, but it's the experience of 2 other users of this razor as well. There's a post by Victor for his experience, and then a post by Bob for Bob's experience. Now, there's also a link to Tiffany Ann's experience, and she's a female traditional wet shaver and blogger, and so there's a link to that as well. So, all in all, everybody was impressed with the razor, basically stating that if there was a razor that was worth $300, that was probably the one. Now, from my standpoint, granted, I don't have one in my hands, nor do I expect to get one anytime soon, but I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, a chunk of stainless steel, and yes, it is absolutely gorgeous and beautifully machined. Okay, but it's still a chunk of stainless steel. I've got, a Valet Autostrop that doesn't cost a whole lot, and, I've got maybe $20 in it, and the blades are relatively inexpensive, and I don't know that I'm getting as good a shave, but I doubt very seriously I'm getting one that's drastically worse, because at the end of the day, to me, it is a function of the razor, but it's also a function of the blade, and I end up using the same blades, and after that, I don't know. So it's a great article. It is an absolutely great blog, and you walk away from reading it having a much, much better understanding of what is tagged as the best razor on earth, or at least that's what they were aspiring to make. You walk away with a very good understanding and feel for what it is and how it performs. So again, great job by Sharpologist. I'm always impressed by what they put out there. And again, well, they hit the mark. All right, well, it's another rainy day here in South Carolina. The upstate is getting dripped on. It's not a hard rain, but the ground is not taking any more. So there is moisture and puddles and stuff, well, everywhere. Anyhow, let's talk about the shave of the day. The shave of the day today was another excellent shave provided by Yardley Shaving Soap, a vintage shaving soap. It lathers really, really nicely. It does. Now, I'm using, today I used a bore brush. I used my Smog 1305. And, today, both days that I've lathered this stuff, I've lathered it in a bowl, in a lather mug, that under ordinary circumstances would leave a soap, well, thin and strained to produce a lather. And I did that kind of on purpose. Number one, I'm using it as a test bed. But number two, it's also just to, because it fits another device, the little coffee warmer that I'm using, in order to get, warm, traffic jam. Okay. In order to get warm lathers in the morning. So all is good. Anyhow, it does a very nice job. It lathers up nicely, and there's plenty of lather for 3 passes, touch-ups, whatever you want. Not a problem with the Yardley. Now, The other thing that I did today is I loaded the brush for all of about, 15 seconds. Yeah, like 15 seconds. Yesterday I went like, 45 seconds or so. Today, I made a conscious decision to do about 10 swirls in about 15 seconds using my bore brush. So it was quick. There wasn't a lot on there. So between that and the mug that I'm using, I am, for the most part, straining this soap to make a lather, and it is still performing, nicely. Yeah. Wow. And it really makes you wonder what's in that stuff. Now, of course, it was produced back in the days when you didn't have to put the ingredient list on there. So you kind of wonder, all right, what really is in this stuff? But it does do a fabulous job and work very, very well. Anyhow. And the little wooden box that it comes in is pretty nice, too. I mean, the thing that's amazing is just the box alone sells for, $10, $15 on eBay. It's like, really? What's I've got one that's like got soap in it. So it is one of those fun and, really nice things. So thank you very much for sending it to me, and I do greatly appreciate it. But, okay, so shave of the day. So we went with, again, the Yardley soap, bore brush, did a good job. It wasn't thin this time because, my bores don't absorb as much water, and, there you go. It just kind of made everything a little bit more controlled when I started using the methodology that I know and understand well. So that's another thing that you have to look out for. If you're, again, because there's so many variables in your routine, or potential variables in your routine, you may want to, especially when you're first starting out or when you're trying to discover something, lock down one or two of them and not change, because it will, change the experience just a little bit. The difference that a brush makes, yeah, it does. The Badger brush holds a lot more water, and it's harder to get it out, so the lathers are just generally have more water in them and can be thin. The bores, which is what I'm used to, and I've got a good feel for that, is about right. And the synthetics, I always struggle because they don't absorb any water at all. I always struggle to get enough water in it. So one will make a thin lather, one will make an all right lather, and one will make an exceedingly thick lather. So if you understand that going into the game, you can then adjust and manipulate things, to your liking. So it is important to understand that, if you're having issues, lock down a couple of those variables and move forward and see what happens. Anyhow, the shave of the day continues with my Valet Autostrop and my feather no spine single edge blade. A beautiful combination. 3 passes. And the thing that was interesting is I didn't really do much touch-up today. It was, and I changed up the routine just a little bit. Usually what I'll do is I'll touch up underneath my neck, at the end. And this go around, when I was doing cross-grain passes on the majority of surfaces, I spent just a touch more time doing cross-grain passes on my neck. And, so you might say that I was touching up while I was doing the second pass all at the same time. It seemed to work wonderfully. And then did the against the grain pass in the third pass, and away we go. Finished up with some L'Occitane shaving balm, and this time I chose my lavender scent. And so, walking out of the house feeling good on a rainy day. So let's talk about the shave of the day. Okay, first off, again, it is a rainy day. Holy cow. Starting to think of, this is how Noah felt. It's incredible. It just never stops. It's like, I don't think I've had last weekend was dry, But other than that, it's like, oh my gosh, everything we do anymore, it's in the rain. Anyhow, let's talk about the shave of the day. So the shave of the day, did something a little bit different. Well, I say that. I have been using my my electric scuttle, my lather bowl, and my coffee warmer in order to figure things out. Sorry, had a police lady trying to direct traffic here and doing it in a rather different way. Tad confusing. Anyhow, I had been using my my electric scuttle concept where I have a little Mr. Coffee warmer and warming up my my lather bowl and keeping my brush warm and keeping the lather warm, and it's been just, nice. It really has. It's been rather effective and very, very pleasant. Well, today I said, let's just go ahead. Jeez. Oh, gosh. Trying to get out of traffic, and people are just nuts. Why don't people look out for other people? It's just incredible. People don't get over in the other lane when you can see somebody merging. They don't stop for other people. They just, oh my gosh, it's just all about me. Jeez, it's just frustrating. My son even commented on it the other day. We were driving down the road, and my son, who's 19 years old, he's a college student, and I thankfully he said this because it's like, okay, maybe there's hope. But he's like, why the heck do people do this? Are they that rude, or are they just oblivious? And I'm thinking the whole time, the segment that I did way back when called Obliviata, and it fits. Jeez. Anyhow, back to the shave of the day. This is what happens when you podcast in a vehicle while you're traveling. You get distracted, you get irate. It's just, oh my gosh. Anyhow, back to the shave of the day. So I've been experimenting with my electric scuttle concept, and it's really been doing a great job. Well, today I decided that, I was going to use my Yardley soap, and I was going to do it, but I wasn't going to use my electric scuttle. I was actually going to use ye old salsa bowl. And so that's what I did. Now, my salsa bowl is, roughed up on the inside to basically really create a nice, luxurious lather with just about, anything. And so I loaded the my Samog brush with the Yardley for probably about 15 seconds. It wasn't much. It was, a very light load, and just because I wanted to see. And as I whipped it up, it whipped into a very, very nice lather. Now, I didn't put any extra water in it either. I kind of left it thick, but, moderately thick, and, used that. And it really did a good job. It lathered very well. And so I think the underlying premise that Yardley lathers just fantastically, that's proven true. However, the interesting thing, and I'm trying to figure out what it is that's doing this. I'm trying to figure out if it's, because I'm getting down deeper into the soap, or is it because of the bowl? I just don't know. It had a little bit more glide. Now, so far, the Yardley has not provided just a phenomenal amount of glide. And in fact, when I got it, the letter even said that. Lather's great, not a whole lot of glide. I've got better soaps. And so it's interesting. It's one of those things, okay, is it because I'm getting down deeper into it and starting to get into some of the compounds that give it glide, or is it the fact that I'm lathering it differently? So I'll have to continue to play with it and find out just what the sweet spot, if you will, of Yardley soap really is. Now, of course, shaved it all off with my Valet Autostrop and the feather spineless single-edge blade that you can use in the Autostrop. a fine blade. It really is. I mean, that combination for me, it really is amazing. You know, and it turns out that Sharpologist, you know, at one time I had said, it surprises me that nobody uses or manufactures these types of razors anymore. Now, when I was saying that, of course, I was kind of leaning toward the relatively inexpensive stamped steel or brass razors like the Autostrop or the Pals or, you know, something of that nature that then has like a screw-on handle. But as the article in Sharpologist that came out this week, 2,000 or 3,000 word article on his views on the newest razor that he has tested, which in fact utilizes the feather spineless single edge blades and even has a pivoting head. Now, of course, it encompasses all of this in a stainless steel structure that makes this razor, well, rather pricey. You know, I'm thinking the whole time while I'm looking at my Valet Autostrop, you know, this is just, you know, steel with a little bit of brass or just brass, you know. It's like, this has lasted, you know, 60 years, 70 years, you know, it's still functional, still works great, not a problem. Okay, so you make one out of stainless steel and it'll last for a millennia? It's just, what's the point? And of course, it does have the pivoting head, which means it has a spring or something like that in there that can break and fall out, and then what do you do? I mean, yeah, it's a nice concept at all, but I'm sorry, it's one of those new and improved gimmick type things, you know? I mean, men have been shaving for how long without, you know, flexible heads and you know, all this, and all of a sudden it's you know, if you make a razor, it has to have. I mean, the Beluga had a pivoting head. It's like, come on, really? Really? You can't just make an honest razor and let the human being manipulate it as they need to do the job? I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess. Anyhow, so another brilliant shave on the with the Valet Autostrop, being as old as it is and still doing, well, a fine job. So we're having a fun time. One of my boys is working on getting his license, and he drives great. He really does. He's a very conscientious driver. His problem is that he doesn't really look around much. His awareness of what's going on around him is, well, a bit limited, I guess. And so when you ask him, what was that sign we just passed? He has no clue. And the problem is that it's difficult to distinguish between road signs and advertisements. And I can see that because, quite honestly, if you drive down a road, just drive down the road and take a look, in America I'm speaking, just take a look at the number of signs that your brain has to contend with. Those flipping things are everywhere. And then pick out, well, the road signs, railroad crossings, highways, you know, not street names, don't worry about that, pedestrian crossing, curves, turns, speed limits, that kind of stuff. It really almost gets lost in the clutter. It really is rather amazing. You know, especially when you get into an urban area, your brain is just absolutely overwhelmed with just, well, stuff. It's interesting, and yet at the same time, we expect our kids, as they're learning to drive, to be able to pick out and distinguish the, well, important signs. The problem is that the reason that they put the signs all over the place at about the same levels and everything is because they want you to give the same importance to the advertisements as you do to, well, the road signs. the ones that actually maintain order on the roads and highways and byways of our fair cities. It's curious. And the thing is that in a lot of locales, they let them do it. I can understand if you have, signs, advertisements, things like that around a business or a little bit back away from the road or something like that. But I mean, these things are like right there on the road, same place that the road signs are, same level. And it's like, if you look, your mind's eye, just all you see is just stuff. And yet we're asking these kids who may or may not be good at picking out stuff of distinguishing within that mess certain things. The other thing, of course, is, some signs are fairly obvious. Some are not. It's really rather curious. I've always been amazed, for example, at the signs, especially when you're on fairly flat land and you can see it, and curve ahead. Well, duh. Or, you've got this, down here we've got, church ahead signs, so if, especially on, Wednesday nights or Sundays or whatever, when you got people coming in and leaving, at least you're understanding. But then the churches themselves have these big signs out in front of them with lights and everything else, and like church ahead. Duh, I can see it. It's right there. It really is rather interesting the way that we've gotten here. And I understand we need our kids to understand what speed limit signs are and those kind of things. I get that. And we want them to be safe on the roads. I get that. And everybody's supposed to have a common understanding. Yeah, I get that too. It's just we really don't give them any advantage at all. It's rather interesting. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting is that apparently they don't like it if and this was from my older son. They don't like it if you drive with the flow of traffic. So if the flow of traffic is going over the posted speed limit, well, that's a no-no, and you're supposed to drive at the speed limit. Potential problem with that philosophy is that, as I've said before, there have been studies conducted, and the majority of accidents happen because of people who drive 5%, or I think it's 10% lower than the flow of traffic, or 10% higher than the flow of traffic. And predominantly, those are the ones that cause the accidents and crashes and snarl-ups and everything else. So, you sit there and you go, okay, drive with the flow of traffic, and then they go for a test, and they go, well, if I do that, I get in trouble. Can't win, can you? It's that never-ending balance between, the rules and, well, just a touch of common sense. Sometimes they coincide. Yeah, sometimes they don't. Anyhow, if you get an opportunity, especially if you happen to drive through an urban area, just for the heck of it, take a look at all the signs your mind has to deal with as you're driving down the road, and see if you can't pick out the street signs, the road signs, the highway signs, speed limit signs. And just as you're driving down the road, look over on the shoulder there, and just see what kind of a visual cacophony of stuff you have to deal with on any given day. Well, we have trouble in paradise. Okay, so it's not as drastic as all that. Well, maybe it is. Yeah, it depends on your point of view, I suppose. Anyhow, what's going on? All right, so the other day I ordered off of Fleabay a razor that I had been wanting for a while, specifically an ever-ready shovel head. And I found what I thought was a very pristine-looking razor and went ahead and bought it. Now, it wasn't a whole lot of money, so, okay, I get that. Lo and behold, I get it, and there's a part missing off of it. There is a metal clip that is spot welded, or supposed to be spot welded, on the inside cover on the back of it that does two things. Number one, it holds the blade down in the guards, and number two, it latches the cover closed. And that piece is in fact missing. Now, I didn't notice this at first. I went ahead and put a razor in a razor in the or a blade in the razor, and actually, in my excitement, I even lathered up some Mitchell's wool fat and proceeded to shave with it. And it shaved, well, fairly good. The problem is that I noticed that it was not, well, consistent. The reason that it wasn't consistent is because the blade was moving around. The blade was moving around because the piece that holds the blade in place to make sure that it doesn't move around wasn't there. Trouble in paradise. The razor that I had been looking forward to getting, and the razor that I had been kind of, not actively searching for, but offhandedly searching for a while just because, well, I wanted one, it failed. Jeez. Okay, well, those things happen. I understand that. Other than that, the razor is absolutely pristine. Really a good-looking unit. So, there you go. And quite honestly, I don't know if the guy that sold it knew that it was busted or not, but it is a unique piece, and the thing that I marvel at as I look at it is how relatively simple it is as far as, the build of the actual razor. It's like 4 pieces that are spot welded and riveted together and, screwed on with the handle and everything, and voila, you're done. And you slide an old spined single-edged razor in there, and you have an effective razor that works nicely. It's one of those things, again, that you look at it and you go, okay, if these things are so dang simple, why? Just out of curiosity, why are people going to the expense, etc., of machining these absolutely, they are absolutely beautiful and wondrous creations that cost, $200 out of stainless steel when, something that's made out of stamped steel, brass-plated, whatever, is just fine. Or it may even be stamped brass. It really does kind of, it was good enough for our great-grandfathers, but apparently it's not good enough for us, and we have to have, well, stainless steel. Okay. I'm sorry. Gimmick. Fad. Really? I don't know. They look nice. Okay, I get that. They don't need to be anywhere near as expensive as what they are. They really don't. You could make a very nice single-edged razor out of stamped brass or stamped steel and then plate it and come up with something that is, well, absolutely wonderful and beautiful and actually, in fact, be an heirloom razor, just like the vintage razors I have in my collection that have seen 70, 80 years worth of life and use. It can happen. And quite honestly, I understand buying a firearm and wanting to hand it down to your kids. Do you really want to hand down a razor to your kids? Do you really care? I'm okay with giving them one. I don't really care about passing one on. That's just me. Maybe a straight razor or something, but that's, well, a little bit different. Anyhow, I don't know. Mussings on a foggy morning as I'm driving to work and trying to wonder what it's all about. And, geez, you would think that after, 60 years, a couple of spot welds would hold up. Now, if after this week's episode you have a, craving to at least try a Valet Autostrop and one of the feather no-spine blades, there is probably the best explanation I have ever found of the different variations. There are 4 different variations that this post goes over. It's over at theshavenook.com, and I'll go ahead and link to it because it is an excellent source of information on the Valet Autostrop razors and the differences, and so that if you ever do run across one, whether it's on eBay or in an antique shop, you'll be able to at least have an understanding of what those differences are and what it is you're actually looking at. So I'll link to that, but I have found that it has been a great little article that I've been referring to. And right now, Autostrops on eBay are running anywhere from, I don't know, $10 to $30 for decent razors, drivers, if you will. Now, the pristine ones, okay, yeah, you're going to pay more just like anything else. But at the same time, if you want one that just seems to shave good and is, you're looking for one like an open comb, you're looking for the comb section itself to be in good shape and to have a good finish on it. Because other than that comb section, the only other part on a Valet Autostrop that really touches your face, well, is the blade. So there you go. There's not a lot of contact of the razor. So that's rather unique. And, you may not get the same experience as a Oneblade, but yeah, I'm here to tell you, from my experience, a Valet Autostrop with the feather spineless blade, well, like I've said in past podcasts, I think I talked about it one other time, to me, this thing's like the equivalent of a lightsaber for stubble. I mean, it really is a fabulous, fabulous shave. So, I'll put a link in the show notes. Go check it out. Well, let's talk about the shave of the day. Okay, so this morning, a little cool out here this morning, and so as I woke up, I realized it was a little cool in the house, and decided that a nice, warm lather would be, appropriate. Now, I had been using the Yardley, but I wanted something that was, just a little slicker, just to test a theory and see something. So, one of the slicker soaps that I have just sitting there on the counter at the moment is the Mitchell's Wool Fat. So, went ahead and pulled that out, soaked the brush, put it on the little coffee warmer plate, my lather bowl full of hot water, and soaked my Samog SOC brush, big old boar brush, and proceeded to jump in the shower. Now, when I got out of the shower and proceeded to lather up the Mitchell's Wool Fat, I put 2 teaspoons of water in it, but probably a little bit high on the water content, but it lathered up to a nice, luxurious lather nonetheless. Now, usually I use 1 teaspoon of water. This time I used 2. I just wanted to see, because I'd been having some I'm not going to say issues, but some different lathering qualities in the hot bowl as opposed to a non-heated bowl. And I wanted to see if it was a water issue, or what it was. And so I played around a little bit. Again, it's one of those variables. You can adjust things. It's like trying to whip up a lather in a salsa bowl that is just, fresh off the storeroom shelf and smooth sided. It doesn't build lather just very, very well. I mean, it does okay, but it doesn't do just well. Now take that same salsa bowl and roughen up the inside surface with 60 or 80 grit sandpaper. And after a few times, first few times it's going to foam something terrible, but eventually you'll knock off all the ridges that are causing all the foam action, and it settles down into a lather machine, and very similar to a lather bowl or a scuttle or something like that has lines cut in it diagonally so that your brush actually has something to hit against and to beat against, if you will. So, or at least the bristles do. Anyhow, so the lather went well, and like I said, a little bit extra water just to see, just to play around with. But other than that, it worked fine. Now, the razor that I have been using all week is my Valet Autostrop with my feather spineless single-edged blades in them. Now, let's see, I think I've got right at 4 or 5 shaves on that razor at this point. And quite honestly, the razor itself, well, actually let's see. Yeah, it's pretty close to 4 or 5. Anyhow, the razor itself, the blade, it's pretty much worn out. Now, I read with some interest a while ago where Mantic said that in his quick review of I think it's the One razor, that he could get about 3 shaves out of one of the blades before he could start telling a difference, and pretty much the blade was, on its last legs. Of course, you can do more than that, but you're going to have shaves that are, well, just a tad rough, and get a little irritation maybe, and, just the general shave is going to degrade. Okay. So I will say that I have confirmed that, at least in my own activities, that 3 to 4 shaves is about the max. After that, they just kind of degrade to a point where you go, well, it's okay, but it's no longer, I don't know, pleasant, and maybe that's a little bit strong. Not necessarily pleasant, but it's not as fine as it could be. It's kind of like drinking, a very nice wine and then switching to Boone's Farm. Yeah, it's wine, but it's not just the same. And for anybody that's been around in the 70s, you'll know the reference. Anyhow, so the shave, yeah, it was on its last legs. I still got a very, very nice shave with it. BBS in some spots. Some spots are just socially acceptable, but that's okay. Didn't want to push the limits, as it were. Finished up with a little bit of Cold River Soapworks. Let's see, is it Cold River Soapworks? Yeah, Cold River Soapworks balm, and finished up with a cedar balm that really just smells fantastic. And that's one thing about the Mitchells. It's a very neutral smell. So, it's one of those shaving soaps that you can marry up with just about any aftershave scent and be just fine. So, overall, good stuff. Now, today, of course, is Veterans Day, and I make it a point, I always have, to go and shake the hands of all the guys that I know that served or are serving and say Happy Veterans Day. And it's amazing because some people don't do that. And it's a shame. Some companies, don't necessarily recognize their veterans and don't recognize the people who have served. In fact, some companies, on Veterans Day we can't just, remember or say thank you to the folks that served in our military. We have to thank the service for everyone. Like, really? Come on. It's just one day, people. It's not like we're talking 365 here. Anyhow, I make it a point to go out and say thank you to all the veterans that I know, shake their hand, and it's one of the few days when I don't make inter-service jokes. Now, the rest of the time, I'm sorry, they're fair game. That's just one of the things that happens, okay? I will give another service guy just crap just because. And in fact, I'll give some sailors crap just because of the ships that they were on or where they were stationed or whatever. It's just kind of a thing we do. And but on Veterans Day, that's the one day that I will not do that. It's like, yesterday was the Marine Corps 240th birthday. I went around and shook the hands of the Marines that I know and said happy birthday, and that's that is also the one day that I won't give Marines a hard time. So Marine Corps birthday, Veterans Day, yeah, it's the only time I give Marines any slack. Other than that, It's open season. But it's all meant in good fun, and it's all meant in brotherly love. You know, it truly is. It's interesting. I was sitting there last night, and I was thinking, you know, Veterans Day didn't start out as Veterans Day. It started out as Armistice Day and Remembrance Day, and in some countries on this day, it is still Remembrance Day. So if you see people wearing red poppies, that is a sign of remembrance. And you know, it's interesting. I have walked the fields of battle and that were in France in World War I and World War II. You know, I've visited the graveyards of the men and sometimes women who died overseas in that arena anyhow, serving this country. And you know, one of the things that I happen to know from veterans, okay, is that on Veterans Day it's very difficult for a veteran, for someone to walk up, shake their hand, say Happy Veterans Day, and for them not to think somewhere in their heart of those that, well, aren't there anymore. It's, you know, it's kind of like if you ask the guy that got the medal, you know, did he deserve it? 9 times out of 10 he'll say, no, I didn't. They did. They didn't make it, and they didn't get one. You know, I'm here, I get the medal. Yeah, I understand that. It's a unique perspective, and it's one that a lot of people just don't understand. But, you know, it's difficult for me because on these type of, I guess, I don't know, military holidays, if you will, I do remember, and I do think about those that have gone before. And, you know, I'm kind of I enjoyed learning about World War I, mainly because I was in the area in France where that war was fought, and knew the towns' names and all of that, and went and visited. And that was fun. It was educational. It was just interesting. You know, in World War II, I visited some of the towns. I was in Normandy. It was a week after the 50th anniversary. I didn't make it for the 50th anniversary. It's probably a good thing because it was just absolutely slam-packed with people. We made it there a week later, my wife and I, and there were still remnants of people driving around in old military vehicles and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun visiting and seeing the areas and seeing the battlefields and the beaches and the towns that were so prominent in the beginning days of the Normandy invasion. And but it's one of those things that on Veterans Day, even though, you know, it didn't become Veterans Day really until I believe sometime in the 50s. I believe it was 1954, if my recollection is correct, that a gentleman by the name of Weeks, I think it was, had been pushing for a Remembrance Day, not only for those that had gone before, but in fact for all members of the armed services that had served, and it became Veterans Day. And so, you know, it's one of those things. It's kind of a double-edged thing for me. On one hand, I like and encourage people to go and thank a veteran, say Happy Veterans Day, acknowledge them for one day a year. But at the same time, I'm also drawn to the fact that well, I remember those that came before I did, who, you know, served before, served with, and served after. You know, like I tell young people that I find out are going into the military, you know, the statement that I make is, thank you very much for stepping up when I stepped out, because if that didn't occur, well, we wouldn't have a military, and without a military, a country can become quickly overrun. And so, at the same time, you know, there are things that we do with our military that some people don't agree with. I understand that completely, but at the same time, Think about what would happen if we didn't have a military. Sometimes it's a rough world we live in, and that's just kind of the way it is. Without one, it's not necessarily a pretty picture. I know people like to think of things as being very pretty and nice, but when you turn back the curtain, sometimes it's not as pretty as what you would like it to be. Anyhow, those are kind of some reflections on Veterans Day. Go thank a veteran, shake their hands, look them in the eye, give them a hearty, happy Veterans Day. And they're unique individuals. They're unique people. They've had unique experiences. So once in a year, thank them. And if you are a veteran, thank you. Well, that concludes this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have some suggestions or would like a topic covered, drop me an email at BrushnSoapnBlade@gmail.com or give me a call at 864-372-6234 or contact us on Twitter at BrushnBlade. You can also visit us at our blog, BrushnSoapnBlade.wordpress.com. As always, we're available on iTunes and Stitcher.